When many Christians who lived in majority Muslim countries immigrated to the West, there were a lot of great freedoms we got to experience. But most important of these freedoms were freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and the freedom to walk into a church without the fear of a potential Islamic jihadist suicide bomber looming in the back of our minds. And sure, the Western liberals and atheists of their time looked down upon and mocked Christianity to no end. Prominent figureheads such as Richard Dawkins and the late Christopher Hitchens at least tried to address other religions and were critical of them as well.
As a Sufi Muslim, I'm very ruffled by the title of your book. Did you have to settle for the literal negation of Allahu Akbar?
Yes. I thought so. Thank you for that. Thank you. At the moment, it's very clear to me the most toxic form that religion takes is the Islamic form.
But the euphoria of Western freedoms would soon come to an end, as extremely anti-Christian, anti-Western, far-left Marxist terrorists, activists, started to gain power over many Western institutions, including major church organizations. Backed by powerful asset management companies, billionaires, and virtue-signaling politicians, these activists continue to wage war on Western democracies. They are also, quite frankly, a cult, not just in the way they operate, but their philosophy is much like a cult as well, though the average person has been fooled into thinking that Marxism is nothing more than an alternate economical system. And like most demonic cults, they like to especially single out Christians and cultural Christians, and they love to target them and their beliefs. These activists, unfortunately, now hold a powerful and dangerous weapon in their hands, one that they have been sharpening for years. That weapon is the same Islamic jihad that many of us came to the West to escape. One particular behavior and strategy I notice that both of these comrades share is how they both continue to pretend that they are nothing more than victims of oppression, while simultaneously they wage holy wars to conquer and colonize, as they have always done. Another thing to note is that outside of the American Antifa militia, the average socialist is a far cry from the strong revolutionary soldier that would bring about the bloody revolution for Karl Marx.
Privilege, point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Okay.
Quick point of privilege once again. Hi, James Jackson, Sacramento DSA, he, him. I have already asked people to be mindful of the chatter of their comrades who are sensitive to sensory overload, and that goes double for the heckling and the hissing. It is also triggering to my anxiety.
This is why it is of great importance for the Marxists to have the Islamists at their disposal while they run interference for them. For years now, woke politicians, the controlled media, and controlled social media have increasingly pulled in the public discourse on Islam, labeling all critique of the ideology as Islamophobic, and have tried to sell us a progressive-looking Islam. Even now, they keep trying to create hate speech laws to try dismantling free speech, a cornerstone of modern Western society, in an effort to control as well as prevent the exposition of their activism and the Islamists.
This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred, for example, or bigotry, whereas it's only the objection to the preachings of a very extreme and absolutist religion. Watch out for these symptoms. They are just symptoms of surrender, very often ecumenically offered to you by men of God in other robes, Christian and Jewish and smarmy ecumenical. These are the ones who will hold open the gates for the barbarians. The barbarians never take a city till someone holds the gates open for them. And it's your own preachers who will do it for you, and your own multicultural authorities who will do it for you. Resist it while you can.
They are also hard at work in trying to hide violent acts committed by Islamists. Once again, their excuse being that they are just trying to prevent Islamophobia, when the more integrated Muslims of British society actually want you to call out and get rid of the extremists. That said, about 900 Brits went to join ISIS, and about 40% of them actually returned to the UK. And I don't exactly see people kicking these individuals out of their communities. This practice of trying to hide such information has become so common now that whenever news of a potential terror attack breaks, it has become a bit of a running joke for the average person to see how long it takes till the media deems it a domestic incident caused by someone with a mental illness. This suppression of information and control of free speech has only emboldened the Islamists as they continue to see how far they can push the envelope. Many of these allies are increasingly given access to mainstream platforms to spread their deception, and very rarely, if ever, are they called out for their deceptive tactics. The fact that out of all the major TV interviews that the cheap smoke-smelling Bassam Youssef has given on the Palestine issue, only Konstantin Kisin of Trigonometry legitimately pressed him on what Israel's response should have been after October the 7th should tell you all you need to know.
October 7th has happened, right? It's happened. What should Israel have done in your opinion? That's all I'm asking.
Not this.
Okay, but not this. Okay, what should they have done?
Not this.
That's a negative. I'm asking what, in the positive sense, what they should have done. How should they have reacted?
My answer didn't change. Not this.
Of course he wouldn't answer this question honestly, because if he did, he would expose the Islamic teaching that it is somehow God's will that the Jews take the hits with their hands tied behind their backs. And what about this guy, Muhammad Hijab, one of the most notorious Islamic apologists in Britain? When was the last time that on his TV appearances he was truly grilled about his toxic teachings?
As I arrived, it looked like two popular YouTubers, Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah, were riling up the mob.
When those Zionists came in with their dogs, that was an act of provocation. So what we're saying now, and I'm making it very clear so everyone understands, if those dogs come close to us again, we will see it as an act of aggression, and we will kill those dogs. We'll put them down.
The difference between us and them is that for them, they think life begins. For us, we believe that death begins. We believe that life begins at death. We don't care about death. We love death.
Let's do this. We want the Zionists, we want the blood.
Wallahi lam yahidn, and the ones who had never been pubescent before. And by the way, this is very important, yeah? I want all Muslims to be aware of this. The reason why we don't have sexual intercourse with 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds or whatever is not because of puberty. Wait a minute, what did you say? It's not because of puberty, because that verse in the Quran actually says lam yahidn. They never had puberty before.
Inappropriate relationships with minors. Something queer theorists would salivate over. Mainstream news organizations, which are mostly owned by a handful of companies, by the way, continue to push the Islam is oppressed narrative in order to further the Marxist agenda. They are more than happy to report of attacks on Muslims by Hindu extremists in India, but seldom mention the Christian schools and churches attacked, Christians killed, and Christian women violated by the same extremists. Of course, another reason they hide the pleas of international Christians, besides their hate for Christ, of course, is that they don't want the world to know how culturally and ethnically diverse and how widespread Christianity is. This would, of course, hurt their monopoly on the diversity narrative, but it will also expose the colonial and oppressive nature of Islam. Many so-called right-wing news outlets, just like the head honchos of the Conservative Party, are controlled opposition and often deliberately dumb down the opposition's viewpoints to such stupid levels that it helps fuel the Marxist revolution.
Let me tell you, Sky News, you know what I did? I went for an interview with your TV show and I left a hidden camera on the side, and Jason Farrell interviewed me for an hour, and when you put your clip out it was 2 minutes long, and what you've done, look at this, and what you've done is you took what I said, you put a voiceover and you totally changed the context, because it was the most complained about show that year. Look, this is the attitude of so-called, she thinks she takes the moral high ground as a journalist, yeah?
Meanwhile, independent conservative journalists who risk life and limb to report facts are not allowed to get press passes and therefore police protection because they are not part of the Westminster Club. Recently, Michaela's community school in London was taken to court because it disallowed Muslim prayers on their playgrounds. The left-wing media and their Islamic allies continued to drag the school through the mud, crying oppression, while the controlled right-wing media made stupid statements like it was the right decision because this is a quote-unquote Christian country. I saw little mention that the students were actually being intimidated and bullied if they didn't take part in the playground prayers and were not fasting for Ramadan. Girls were being harassed for not wearing the hijab, and one girl even left the school choir because she got persuaded that music was haram. The headmistress and other staff still continue to receive death threats. Many have been verbally abused, and one's house got attacked. And no one is talking about how kids are being radicalized because the so-called liberals are on the side of the Islamists. Nowadays, it seems the only time progressives care about calling out Islamic extremism is if the incident goes viral fast enough and is widespread enough for it to be out of their control. For example, last year's church and property attacks in Faisalabad, Pakistan. News organizations reluctantly had to report on them, and notice how none of them seem to have reported on the preceding demonstrations and protests that took place outside Pakistani consulates and Downing Street itself. If these were protests about Islamophobia, about Palestine, about Black Lives Matter, about climate change, or even some kind of LGBTQ rights, these media Marxists would jump at the opportunity to report them. Similarly, the Iranian protests against their Islamic regime would have been buried. Unironically, the Western progressives jumped on that train when it was trending and started claiming that we are going through exactly the same type of oppression. The absolute audacity of these opportunistic snakes. Iranian women are getting their heads removed, and these guys say they are going through the same. As if constantly protecting Islamists and sending money to the Iranian government is not fueling that regime. Now, what really prompted me to stop being silent about these issues was the recent attack on Bishop Mari Emanuel. If you haven't seen it in the news already, Bishop Mari Emanuel, an Orthodox bishop and popular internet personality, got attacked during a live stream of his church service. Though he's from a very specific denomination of Christianity, he is very much a unifying figure of the church in a broader context. Many people, such as myself, shared the news of the attack and also shared videos of the incident to raise awareness among the dulled masses on social media. There was, by the way, no visible blood in the video, and even the weapon was hard to see. However, many of our videos were removed by Meta and X after orders received from Australia's Ministry of Truth. E-Safety Commissioner, Julie Inman Grant. Her exact quote, according to the toilet paper The Guardian, "Our priority is to protect people using our services from seeing this horrific content, even if bad actors are determined to call attention to it. And we, whose post got removed, received meta notification stating, 'It looks like you shared or sent symbols, praise or support of people and organizations that we define as dangerous, or followed them.'" That's right, my brothers and sisters in Christ. If you decide to call attention to religiously motivated attacks on Christians, well, you are a bad actor and support dangerous organizations. Now, the naysayers might say, surely the content could be viewed as violent and warrants removal? Even though, let's be honest, there are 10 times worse world star hip-hop videos all over Meta platforms. But even if that were true, out of the 3 videos of the incident that were removed, the video that was removed the most was not of the attack itself. It was in fact the video where the Islamist attacker verbally stated that the attack was a retaliation against the bishop because the bishop spoke of his prophet. And even though this video had already been seen by so many people, the news propaganda machine went into full motion, and they started to circulate online that the motivation behind the attack was unknown. Additionally, their Islamic allies started to flood multiple posts online, repeating the same lie, but also peddling other conspiracies, such as, number 1, the attacker was actually Christian. Number 2, there is no evidence the attacker was a Muslim. Number 3, the attack is a Jewish conspiracy. Interesting that these literal bad actors get no repercussions. In fact, one Orthodox Christian in the UK got visited by police and a psychologist just because he said Christians must rise up and take a stand. Interestingly, sometime prior to this incident, I replied on an Instagram post that was making illogical and false religious claims on behalf of Islam. Now, these were claims that I had already commented on some time before, but this time my comment was removed immediately, and Instagram stated that it looks like you tried to get likes, follows, shares, or video views in a misleading way. Ironic, because my Instagram account is quite literally private. Apparently, calling out literal and repeated lies of the Marxist allies is misleading. Then again, what did I expect from a platform where getting your post flagged by their politically biased fact checkers is considered a badge of honor? Meanwhile, the radicals continue to spam their propaganda and hateful and often genocidal rhetoric on these platforms seemingly without impunity. And I include far-right idiots who are also a source of encouragement for them. And by far-right, I mean actual far-right, not how everyone under the sun gets labeled as far-right nowadays. In fact, the Islamists are so emboldened by these activists that Jews on the street of Britain are being asked to hide away from the pro-Palestine mobs, or they will get hurt. Simultaneously, the Islamist enablers go on the news and outright lie that there are only a couple of individuals causing these problems. I mean, which one is it? Either it is such a serious and widespread problem that Jews cannot be around these protesters, or it is such a small issue that Jews should be able to walk around freely. Which one is it? You can't have it both ways. We also, quite literally, had a counter-protester arrested for holding a sign saying Hamas are terrorists, while the people who attacked him went scot-free. Speaking of the Jews, let's not forget how many Jews got sold the fairy tale of the Marxist utopia and have been a major part of spreading Marxism as well. On the other hand, you have the ultra-Orthodox Jews who often target Christians and Christianity. Highly political organizations such as the ADL especially have been instrumental in spreading woke agendas and have blackmailed people to do so. Time and time again, they have gone on the defense for corrupt politicians and so-called philanthropists, and have misused and overused the term anti-Semitism so much that it has fanned and fueled anti-Jewish sentiment and conspiracies. Now, if the Marxists think that at some opportune moment they can abandon their Islamist allies, just like they seem to have done with their Jewish comrades, well, they are highly mistaken. If radical Islam is continuously given more and more power, it will continue its revolution with or without their liberal comrades.
The reason why you have to fight them is because they are Jews and Christians. You should fight those empires around you, or those hukumat around you, which are Jew or Christian, until they give the jizya. That's fine. That we already know Islam allows. And then the howness of that is in the hadith. The three options that they're given: either you give the jizya, or you do this, or you do that. We're not apologetic about that point. That is truth. If your religion has to have an expansionist element, so then therefore there is no situation or conceivability of peace being made between Muslims and non-Muslims. Islam is a warrior religion in many ways, and it's unapologetically so. It's about expansion, it's about conquest and so on.
Now, legally, when Muslims live in places like Britain, for example, which legally we would classify Britain as Darul Harb, right? Which is, if you translate it, it's abode of war.
The kuffar from Dar al-Harb, there can never be a permanent treaty with the kuffar because it cancels out jihad. It can't be forever. When Muslims get stronger and it's a benefit for the Muslims, they inform the enemy, this treaty has come to an end.
Now, Bishop Mari did what all Christians are taught to do, to forgive and pray for the souls of those who do you harm. It is something that has forever distinguished Christianity from other religions. In fact, it has been reported that immediately after the attack on him, the bishop placed his hand on the attacker and prayed on him for as long as he could. He has now returned to preaching, but it seems he has lost one eye to the incident. But will this persuade the Marxists and their allies that they aren't exactly the good guys they think they are? Who knows? But one thing is increasingly certain, that once again, the Christians who sought refuge in the West find themselves somewhere familiar, going to church with the fear of an Islamic jihadist suicide bomber looming in the back of our minds. And for the haters out there, your boos mean nothing to me. I've seen what makes you cheer.